Hello and welcome students to the first video lecture on the paper CC6 Elementary Phonetics and Spoken English. In this video, we'll cover up Unit 1 of the paper. The topics discussed in this video are phonetics and phonology and the difference between the two. Before we jump directly to our topic, first let us see how these terms are linked to linguistics. Linguistics, as you know, is the scientific study of language. Phonetics and phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics constitute the principal levels of linguistics. There are different levels of linguistic analysis, as you can see here. The basic level is the level of sound. Phonetics and phonology studies the human speech sound, its production, transmission, reception, and the variation of sounds depending on environment. Morphology studies word formation and word formation processes like affixation, back formation, calque, reduplication, etc. Syntax studies the structure of phrases, clauses, and sentences. Semantics is the study of meaning, the study of antonyms, synonyms, homonyms, polysemy, etc. All of these comes under semantics. Pragmatics studies the language in use based on the context. Our prime focus is phonetics and phonology. You will read about the other branches or the other levels in the coming semesters. So let's begin with phonetics. Let us first define the term phonetics. Phonetics is the scientific study of production, transmission, and reception of speech sounds. It studies the medium of spoken language. The root of the word phonetics comes from the ancient Greek word phone, which means sound. The suffix "tix" gives it the status of science. Phonetics and phonology both deals with speech sounds, and phonetics is considered to be a branch of phonology. Phonetics identifies different speech sounds, classifies it as vowel or consonant on broader level, and studies the way of production of speech sounds. It gives physical description to speech sounds of all the languages. It tells us the place and manner of articulation. It tells us which vocal apparatus plays a role in production of which sound. All the sounds of human speech comprising all the languages were listed under the IPA chart in the late 19th century by the International Phonetic Association. At present, there are 107 different letters listed out in the International Phonetic Alphabets chart. It denotes sounds using different notations, most of which are Latin alphabets, to represent different sounds. Like you see musical notations for different musical notes. Similarly, we have IPA to represent different speech sounds. Not everyone studies the musical notes. It is a topic of interest for musicians or singers. Similarly, phonetics is the topic of interest for language learners and teachers. It acts as a tool for language learners in developing standard pronunciation without the help of native speakers. One can depend on his or her knowledge of IPA and transcription of words for correct pronunciation. Earlier, phonetics was limited to correct pronunciation alone. So since Renaissance, as it was the revival of art and learning, people like elocutionists, language teachers, spelling reformers, and missionaries have taken interest in phonetics. But the field of phonetics gained a real boost in the late 19th century as IPA was developed. In the present century, phonetics has developed immensely into various branches and can be claimed as an independent discipline of study. Electronic devices have been developed to study sound and its features. The main concern of phonetics is the phonetic description of sounds and its transcription using phonetic notations from the IPA chart. Now let us talk about the branches of phonetics. Articulatory phonetics, acoustic phonetics, and auditory phonetics are the three main branches of phonetics. Now, as it is evident from the picture, articulatory phonetics deals with the production, acoustic phonetics deals with transmission, and auditory phonetics deals with the perception of speech sounds. Articulatory phonetics studies the movement of speech organs like lips, larynx, soft palate, tongue, teeth, etc. in the articulation of speech. It also studies the manner of articulation. Articulatory phonetics is of greater concern as it deals with production. Acoustic phonetics deals with the transmission of speech sounds. It studies the physical property of sound like frequency, amplitude, pitch, etc. in the transmission. Auditory phonetics studies the reception and perception of speech sounds. Articulatory phonetics is of greater importance for us, so we'll look at it in greater detail in the upcoming lectures. Now, let's move on to phonology. According to the linguist Bloomfield, phonology is the organization of sounds into patterns. If we look at the word etymologically, it is a combination of two Greek words, phone and logos. Phone means sound and logos means subject of discussion. Phonology is the study of the patterns in a language and across languages. It is the study of speech sounds in a language, how speech are organized in the mind and used to convey meaning. Infants are born with the ability to distinguish between different phonemes. Learning the rules for combining different phonemes occur to them naturally as long as the infant hears spoken language around them. Phonology studies abstract mental entities such as structures and processes. It looks at what sound or sound combination are accepted and reasons it. For example, in English language, we do not have words beginning with the sound combination ts, although it is there at word ending like in the word starts. We have ts at the end of that word. However, this combination is acceptable in the phonology of other languages like German. Depending on the nature of phonological study, it can be diachronic or synchronic. A diachronic study of sounds of English, for example, will study Old English, Middle English, Modern English, and the changes that the languages underwent in the course of time. A synchronic study will focus on variations in the languages from region to region in the present time, like the different varieties of English, like the American English, British English, Indian English, etc. Taking the number of sounds analyzed on account, one can study phonology on segmental level or suprasegmental level. On segmental level, a discrete single phoneme and its allophones will be studied. On suprasegmental level, it studies features like stress, intonation, rhythm, which extends over more than one single sound segment. Members of a particular speech community speaking a particular language use only a limited number of speech sounds. Every language makes its own selection of sounds and organizes them into characteristic patterns. This selection of sound and their arrangement into patterns constitute the phonology of a language. Talking of the utility of the field, principles of phonology can be applied to treatment of speech pathologies and innovations in technologies. In terms of speech recognition, systems can be designed to translate spoken data into text. It is because of the phonological observations fed into the artificial intelligence system, virtual assistants like Siri, Google Assistant, Alexa are able to understand the users irrespective of the accentual variations. All this while in the video, we have come across these words phone, phoneme, allophones several times. So let us understand each one of them. Beginning with phone, I have put up the sound symbol to represent that phone is the sound that we hear or produce. Basically, it is the physical aspect of speech sound. Phoneme is the representation of the phone using different phonetic notations. Those notations are called phonemes. These phonemes are written between the backward bending slashes. The examples listed here are the p sound, ch sound and j sound. Now let's see allophones. Allophones are the various surface manifestations of a phoneme. We have taken the example of p sound in two different words, pepper and apple. If the pa sound is in the initial position, it is aspirated. The little h over the p is the symbol denoting aspiration. If the pa sound is in any other position, it is not aspirated. So we in the Indian accent pronounce it as pepper, but it is actually pepper. Now the other word is apple, where the pa sound undergoes no variation or change. You'll notice that the p sound in pepper and the p sound in apple are different. There is a slight variation. Indeed, they are a single phoneme p, but there is slight variation in the pronunciation. So these are the allophones of the phoneme p. So basically, phone is the sound, phoneme is the notation for the sound, and allophone is the little variation in the sound of a phoneme. Now that we have a fair knowledge of phonetics and phonology, let's head on to see the difference between the two. Phonetics studies language in general. Phonology chooses its language or languages of study. Phonetics is concerned with the study of speech sound, its production, transmission, and reception. Phonology is concerned with selection, pattern, and organization of different speech sounds. Phonetics deals with the physical aspect of sound, that is phone. It studies sound and its production. On the other hand, phonology is the abstract or physical representation of sound, that is phoneme. It studies phoneme and its function. Phonetics has limited scope. It deals with description of speech sounds. Phonology has broader scope. It deals with distribution of speech sounds across language and languages. Phonetics is one and the same for all the languages of the world, but phonology of one language will differ from the phonology of another. The difference between phonetics and phonology is that of generality and particularity. So R.H. Robin remarks that phonetics is general, descriptive, and classificatory, whereas phonology is particular and functional. Therefore, phonology is also known as functional phonetics. Phonetics is the science of speech sounds, their production, transmission, and reception. and the signs to represent them in general with no particular reference to any one language. Whereas phonology is the study of vocal sounds and sound changes, phonemes and their variants in particular language. If phonetics can be linked to a world, phonology is a country. The subject matter of phonology is selected phonetic material from the total resource available to human beings from phonetics. So that's it for this video lecture. We have come to the end of this video and I'd like to take a moment to wish you and your family happiness and peace in this time of tribulations. Thank you.